Lin gazed deeply at her and said, if I'm not mistaken, the strength brought by the magical secrets within you has concealed certain abnormalities in your body. If you don't believe me, you can temporarily suppress the magic and see what happens. Madame Puppet was skeptical. She double-checked. Bloodsaw's disciple wouldn't deceive or play tricks on her. This, impossible. Nevertheless, she skeptically extended her hand and quickly made several mysterious gestures, accompanied by a rumbling halo lighting up all over her body. The magical energy flowing in her veins quickly gathered visibly in front of her chest. Using a special method, she temporarily transferred all the magical energy in her body to her heart. In this way, except for the heart, every part of her body became a fleshy body without magical protection. Almost at the moment of removal, Madame Puppet's expression suddenly changed. Cough. Her face suddenly changed color, and she coughed violently. A tremendous pressure spread from her bones to her brain in an instant. Bones seemed to creak as if unable to bear the load. Her body also became stiff and sluggish. In that instant, she even had a strong illusion, as if she were still in her puppet form from years ago, as if she had never turned into a fleshy body. How can this be? She exclaimed. Madam, if my guess is correct, you weren't originally a fleshy body. According to my diagnosis, there should be remnants of some curse hidden in your body, gradually eroding and causing changes in your body over time. The most obvious manifestation is the impact on your bones and flesh. Supporting his chin, Lin said seriously, your bones and flesh seem to be transforming into a wooden and fibrous state. Madame Puppet trembled all over. This is impossible. The blood curse has already been lifted. Wooden fibers. Almost instantly, her mind recalled her state before encountering Bloodsaw. A puppet, a monster with wood as the skeleton and plant fibers and resin as the flesh filler. Her face turned pale. Lin calmly said, this transformation has probably been going on for many years. The reason you couldn't perceive it is because you've become accustomed to driving your body using magical energy rather than relying on the body itself. And this has further weakened your body. Under the influence of magical energy, you may not feel anything unusual. Still, once you encounter a special situation where magical energy is exhausted, this physical degeneration will immediately bring you intense backlash. Lin narrowed his eyes and said, if this were discovered a few decades later, by that time, just removing the magical energy might cause your body to collapse. Madame Puppet's brain instantly went blank. She mumbled, moved her lips, but couldn't say a word. How could this happen? She just wanted to pretend to be sick, let the young man give her a massage casually, prescribe some medicine, and then smoothly use this opportunity to connect with him and her daughters. How did he manage to diagnose so many illnesses just by a casual checkup? It seems that fate has destined me to help you cure your condition. Yes, it must be fate. Otherwise, why would this madam come to my room in the middle of the night to ask for a medical examination secretly? Could it be that my aunt's luck is so strong that even the master's wife, with just one look, wants to drag her into a dark room for some embarrassing play? Thinking about it, it's impossible. Madame Puppet suddenly turned pale, grabbed Lin's hand, and hugged him to her chest, saying, really, child, do you really have a way to cure Auntie? Rest assured, if you can really cure Auntie, Auntie will do anything for you. Even if we secretly roll the bedsheet, Auntie won't refuse to cooperate. Damn it, this has touched upon my moral blind spot. Is the world so open-minded? Aunt, don't say strange things. If you continue like this, I dare not treat you. Lin coughed, awkwardly withdrew his hand, and said, there's no need for the bedsheet rolling. I am a very upright young man who can't stand two taboo experiments, and my orientation doesn't allow me to choose two prominent figures. Compared to a robust girl like Aunt, I still prefer. Of course, he dared not say the last two sentences. Well, let's talk about business first. I found some remnants of a curse in Aunt's body. This indicates that you must have used some method before to eliminate the curse's impact. Can you tell me what method that was? I need to prescribe the right medicine. This method was not mentioned in the system's diagnosis explanation. Madame Puppet was momentarily stunned. Then her pale face suddenly turned somewhat red, saying, are you sure you want me to say? Lin raised his head with dead fish eyes and said calmly, of course, I am a doctor, a guardian of the white robe. I must understand enough information to prescribe the right medicine, understand? Madame Puppet hesitated and nodded. Then her face turned slightly red as she said, actually, it's very simple. In the method of curse removal passed down in our sect, as long as you can find a creature with strong feelings for you, and then, at a moment of emotional outburst, let the other party send you to the peak of ecstasy. She seriously pointed a finger and said, when you are very high, you can suppress the blood curse in your body. Snap! The feather pen in Lin's hand fell to the ground. He was completely stunned. For a while, he didn't know what to say. Madam Puppet earnestly leaned forward and said, "It must be when you're very high. Otherwise, the effect will be greatly discounted." "Do you know what it means to be very high, Lin?" he said. It probably isn't what I'm thinking." Madam Puppet vigorously nodded and said seriously, "That's right, it's exactly what you're thinking." Silence surrounded them. Lin sat dumbfounded on the counter, and the massive puppet lady leaned forward, staring at him intently. If Lin glanced downward slightly, he could see. The scene was as bizarre as it could be. Lin rubbed his eyes forcefully, tilted his head back, and said with a headache, "How about you go try with my teacher again?" Madam Puppet said earnestly, "I didn't know beauty or ugliness when I was a puppet. Now that I'm big, I regret it. Besides, your teacher can't make me very high anymore." "Why?" "Because he has a problem." "What problem?" "Because he has some issues." Lin was stunned. "What issues?" Madam Puppet, as if recalling something very unpleasant, squinted and said, "You men, you fear the most about that issue." Lin's gaze instantly went hollow. This explosive and terrifying news was like a nuclear bomb being thrown into a fish pond, causing countless radiated grilled fish to explode. Shouldn't this be information that a disciple shouldn't know? No way, no way. Teacher, I swear, I really didn't intentionally find out. In my heart, you've always been a robust and invincible man. Wait a minute, let me straighten things out. Lin extended his hand, quickly regaining composure, and tried hard to calm his expression. He immediately recalled the solutions given by the system to those symptoms in his mind. Emotion, climax, suppression. Lin captured those key words. He furrowed his brow, brainstorming. "Madam, let me ask another question. Have you ever thought that removing the curse inside you might not necessarily require that? It might just need an emotional trigger. What do you think?" Madam Puppet sat down, hugged her chest, and closed her eyes. "I've considered that, of course, but things are not as simple as you think. Honestly, before I met your teacher, my original form was a cursed puppet." Lin was stunned. "And puppets have no emotions, no morals, no shame, no joy, no sorrow. Or rather, it's not that they don't have them, it's just challenging to evoke them." She opened her eyes, and her voice softened. "We, in our line, chose the most peaceful method, which is to find a trustworthy living being, gradually build a bond with them, and then, little by little, induce our emotions in the process of interaction. Finally, during that moment, have a complete outburst to undergo transformation. And besides this method, there are others, but they are too cruel, such as inducing extreme despair and resentment through immense torture, allowing the puppet to experience the most painful feelings. Alternatively, destroying everything she cared about, friends, former relatives, everything beautiful and cherished. In their extreme sadness, transformation would likely occur. Compared to these extreme methods, undergoing transformation in joy is the best way. Because, for them, still in their puppet state, that is a way to induce inner emotional responses. The deeper the emotions, the happier they feel during that moment." Lin pondered. "I see." He then raised his head, saying deeply, "However, it seems that this method is not permanent. At least, your curse hasn't been completely removed." Madam Puppet closed her eyes and sneered, "You'd better ask your teacher about that. Teacher's wife, you are no longer a puppet. You don't need emotional induction anymore, right? It should be possible to suppress the curse with purely physical emotions." Madam Puppet was startled. "Do you want to try it?" Madam Puppet stared at Lin, her heart pounding. How to try? Could it be? Bloodsaw's disciple suddenly became enlightened. Could he really want to? This is too taboo. A few minutes later, in the pharmacy, Lin stood calmly in front of the alchemy pot, slowly stirring the bubbling and viscous liquid inside. Madam Puppet stood disappointedly with her arms crossed, sitting there with closed eyes, a few black lines appearing on her head. "Is this alchemy?" Lin asked. Madam Puppet closed her eyes and said, "I thought it was something else." Operating table. Madam Puppet sat in amazement on the operating table, watching Lin raise the table and adjust it to a semi-reclining position. Then she saw Lin using handcuffs on the table to restrain her hands and feet. "Are you playing around?" "Madam, please don't say strange things. This is just a safety measure to prevent you from moving recklessly." Lin squinted, picking up a needle. "And to prevent accidents, I'll temporarily inject a certain amount of anesthetic into your limbs. But all this is for the final treatment. Are you still okay to continue?" Madam Puppet hesitated, saying, "If it can suppress the curse, then anything goes." Lin nodded. Then he placed the dozens of potions he had just brewed in front of her. Madam, if you can endure until dawn after drinking these potions, I guarantee that the curse inside you will be significantly suppressed. But please remember, don't make too much noise. Madam Puppet looked at the pink potions and hesitated, asking, so what exactly is this potion? Lin took a deep breath, closing his eyes. Let me tell you when your curse is suppressed. Because it's really hard to say now. Because it's really hard to say it out loud. In the operating room downstairs, there were suddenly bursts of inexplicable and high-pitched screams. I can't take it anymore. You're finished. You're done. I will definitely not let you off. Oh no. Wah. Continuously, there were piercing, desperate, intermittent sounds coming from downstairs. At the same time, Lin's ears were bombarded with system notifications. Various notifications kept washing over Lin's eardrums, but he closed his eyes, blocked his ears with cotton, and pretended to be asleep, selectively ignoring everything. Gradually, with the passage of time, the desperate and intermittent words couldn't form coherent sentences anymore. Good boy, I beg you, come in quickly come into this room. Really, just come over and talk to me. I'm serious, wow, I can't take it anymore. Really can't take it. If you feel embarrassed go call your teacher also okay, wow. Not only the Bloodsaw Apothecary but the entire Ghost Soul Lane had spent a sleepless night. The next day, which sister or aunt is awake all night long? Simply outrageous. Too much. I really can't stand it. Is it really lasting this long? All the way until morning. Whose general is this so brave? Haha, looks like I'm the only one unaffected. Well, getting old. Can't stand these things. But I have to say, that girl should tone it down. Chanting continuously for 5 or 6 hours is a bit excessive. Why does it feel like it's coming from the direction of the apothecary? No, I have to find an opportunity to go check it out. In the morning, Ghost Soul Lane was empty. In the rolling black fog, a few ghostly figures occasionally appeared, all looking listless and absent-minded. Bloodsaw Apothecary. After silently counting for 6 hours, Lin opened his eyes, calmly got up from the bed, put on his white coat, and wore a mask and gloves. Lin quickly went downstairs and arrived at the door of the operating room, removing the boards nailed to it. He hesitated for a moment, then knocked on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Aunt, how do you feel? Lin kindly asked. There was no response from inside. After much consideration, Lin finally took out the key from his pocket, deciding to open the door and check. Just as he stepped in, Lin saw that there was no one on the operating table, and there were signs of damage on the table, indicating that Puppet Lady had freed herself after the anesthesia wore off. And in the next moment, Lin immediately saw Puppet Lady in the corner with a vacant look, disheveled clothes, a flushed face, and her body occasionally twitching. A broken appearance. As for the scene inside the room, it couldn't be described in words. In general, it was a mess. Then he checked her pulse, conducting a comprehensive examination and diagnosis. The heartbeat is fast. Should be a reaction to prolonged adrenaline secretion. The fibrosis of bones and flesh has undergone a significant reversal. There are signs of a substantial weakening of the curse inside the body, indicating that the treatment is indeed effective. A satisfied smile appeared on Lin's face. He reached out and shook hands with Puppet Lady. Good news, Aunt. The hidden illness in your body is gradually improving. After a few more sessions of treatment, I believe the curse inside you can be fully suppressed. Puppet Lady's body visibly trembled, especially when Lin shook hands with her. A seemingly reflexive response occurred. Puppet Lady murmured in a daze, "You're a devil." Special achievement. There is a chance to obtain it when one or more opposite-sex individuals reach an indescribable stage in any form and by any means under any circumstances, which people cannot, or at least should not, do. You have gained permanent bonuses: Endurance plus 10, Constitution plus 10, Happiness plus 10. Lin numbly ignored all the system descriptions of achievements and directly took out the reward the system had just given him. Tantalizing elixir formula. Quality, high grade. Introduction. People cannot, or at least should not, research this kind of elixir. However, this doesn't necessarily mean it's not an excellent elixir. Due to its intense nature, please use it appropriately. Do not chug a bottle, or the consequences will be at your own risk. Formula. Succubus Body Fluid X1. Hellfire Bud X5, Slime Mucus X1, Spider Demon Sac Fluid X1, etc. Aunt, how do you feel? Has the curse in your body been suppressed? After finishing the tea, feeling the cool breath rushing to her brain, the puppet lady's consciousness quickly recovered. She mumbled, "It seems indeed effective. The abnormality in my muscles and bones is much better than yesterday." Lin smiled. "This is targeted treatment. Curses are different from others. The key is to find the right breakthrough." The puppet lady recalled the night of nightmares she had experienced yesterday. She shivered involuntarily, although what Lin said was not wrong. Using that extremely hateful elixir did indeed have a better effect than intimate activities. This young man could actually endure not sneaking in quietly, because she swore, under those circumstances, if he had come to the operating room, she would definitely not have been able to resist, and who knows what might have happened. For a moment, as she looked at Lin, her gaze became a bit more ambiguous and fond. Lin remained calm, but in his heart, he probably already knew what the puppet lady was thinking. Although I, Lin, am occasionally unconventional, I won't mess around with my teacher's former lover. I would be crazy to venture into troubled waters after boldly proclaiming all those things in front of my teacher yesterday. It would be terrifying to have the teacher find out that I've taken advantage of this situation. Lin absolutely didn't want any connection with this lady after this. After this incident, he must keep a safe distance and not give her any chance to take advantage. By the way, Bloodsaw, I called him yesterday. He didn't hear it. The puppet lady curiously asked. Lin closed his eyes and said, "Rest assured, to prevent some inexplicable misunderstandings, I gave my teacher a small amount of sleeping pills. He's sleeping soundly." The puppet lady teased, considering it so thoughtfully. "You even dared to drug your teacher. What else could he do? Should he let the teacher wake up and see her trapped on the operating table in that lascivious state? I guarantee the teacher would come with a knife on that day." Rather than explaining after a misunderstanding, it's better to nip the misunderstanding in the bud. After the small practice, Lin had already learned to be shrewd. "But anyway, thank you." The puppet lady smiled, her chin resting on her hand. "If you hadn't identified those issues for me, by the time I found out on my own, it might have been too late. From that perspective, you are indeed more outstanding than your teacher. Tell me, silly boy, what reward do you want? In return for your kindness, how about this? If you don't want money, I'll give you something else. What do you think?" Lin was puzzled. He instantly thought of the system prompt about the special reward. Could this be it? Lin hesitated. "What?" The puppet lady's mouth curled up, and she slowly extended her palm. Mysterious waves of magical runes swept over her hand. Snap! A thin book engraved with magical patterns appeared in her hand. Under Lin's curious gaze, she smiled and pushed the thin book toward Lin, saying, "I believe you'll find it interesting. Although I know you're friends with those 3 bounty hunters, they definitely won't stay by your side forever. News of the Mage Association's destruction has already spread through the vision, and there will surely be many creatures with ill intentions coming here to investigate. Don't you want to have more means of self-defense?" Lin lowered his head, picked up the thin book. The large characters on the title page instantly caught his eyes. Puppet Manor Comprehensive Puppet Handbook. Puppet? Lin wondered. He opened the first page of the booklet. What caught his eye first was an exquisitely detailed illustration of a puppet. Beneath the illustration, a densely packed description of the puppet's information was revealed. First puppet, Kang Xuan Yu. Cleanup type puppet with extremely powerful curse abilities, adept at using curses to launch wide-ranging attacks on targets. Personality, mature and eloquent, emotional development, combat rating, energy consumption, high. Appearance, female, lifelike medium-sized curse puppet, adult body type, black straight hair, blue pupils, right eye destroyed, often covered by a flower bud. Notable features include a white robe and blue sash, 175 centimeters. Second puppet, Requiem Song. Combat type puppet with extremely strong melee abilities, capable of becoming a sharp knife on the battlefield through precise assaults and berserk abilities. Personality, insane and pathological, emotional development, combat rating, energy consumption, extremely high. Appearance, female, lifelike light curse puppet, Lolita body type, red hair and eyes, often uses a 3-meter-long heavy scythe. Almost uncontrollable during combat. Notable features include the scythe and red hair, 151 centimeters. Third puppet, Lustrous Lamp. Maid-type puppet. Female, excellent household assistance abilities, a perfect housekeeping puppet with outstanding management and financial skills, allowing her to adapt quickly to any environment. Personality, lively and amiable, emotional development, combat rating, energy consumption, small. Appearance, female, lifelike medium-sized puppet, maiden body type, blonde hair and blue eyes. Often manages the puppet mansion in the absence of the lady. The first head maid of the puppet mansion, wears a maid outfit, perfectly simulates human emotional expressions. Notable features include a smiling face and demure demeanor, 160 centimeters. Lin flipped through the booklet, captivated by the introductions on each page. Each puppet had a detailed illustration and related information, all intricately crafted to resemble real humans, yet possessing an indescribable eerie beauty. All of these, Lin was astonished. The puppet lady smiled faintly, supporting her chin. All of them are excellent puppets, carefully selected and brought back from cursed individuals worldwide. They are my daughters. As you can see, each one excels in their own field, and after my meticulous refinement, at least in terms of appearance, they are more readily accepted by the normal world compared to my ancient wooden puppet. She continued to introduce, leaning forward with a charming smile. So, what do you think? Are you interested in any of them? If you are, Auntie can rent them to you anytime. They can serve as bodyguards, maids, and of course, if you're not afraid of death, they can even be your playthings. Lin, can they all be taken? Lin curiously asked. The puppet lady's smile instantly brightened. Yes, Lin shuddered instantly. Wait a minute. Why is she happier when I say I want all of them? Does she have some evil intentions? In an instant, Lin remembered the curse inside her. Could it be that her real goal is not to thank me but to make something strange happen to me and her puppet daughters, and then help her daughters break the curse? Lin, use my body. No way. Absolutely not. Although I'm occasionally perverted, I can't possibly be as thorough as the teacher. Realizing the puppet lady's intentions in an instant, Lin's heart trembled madly, but he still maintained a calm expression on his face. I didn't say I don't want. Let me take another look. Lin sweated. The puppet lady bloomed with joy again, her smile radiant. Lin pondered and then asked, I understand the combat rating, but Auntie, what does this emotional development level mean? The puppet lady blinked and explained, this is my judgment of how difficult it is to stimulate their emotions based on my many years of interaction with them. The higher the star rating, the easier it is, and the closer they are to real humans. Without hesitation, Lin quickly ruled out all puppets with high emotional star ratings. Best to choose one with no stars. He didn't want to go too deep. And what about energy consumption? Lin continued to ask. The puppet lady chuckled. Just like you flesh and blood creatures, when you're hungry, you eat. They also need to consume energy. Otherwise, they may move slowly or even stop working. But my daughters are quite advanced. They can convert blood, curse energy, or energy blocks into their own energy. Lin thought for a moment and muttered, so they also need to be maintained. The puppet lady. Are there any dolls that can still move even if they don't eat? Madam Puppet closed her eyes and clenched her fists, seemingly annoyed. Was this guy really that stingy? Denying food and expecting the puppet to function. With a displeased expression, Madam Puppet replied, well, there is one. My 7th daughter has some cleanliness issues. She dislikes blood and energy blocks, and she has her unique way of recovery. Curious, Lin asked, what is it? Madam Puppet took a deep breath, extended her slender hand, and placed a bronze object on the counter. Lin was surprised. A winding key. 7th doll, black string moon. Control and cleaning type puppet. Female, extremely powerful in both combat and control. Proficient in using threads formed from secret energy to manipulate the target's movements, leading them to self-mutilation or breaking their necks. Personality, none. Emotional development, combat rating, energy consumption, variable. Appearance, life-size lightweight puppet, lowly physique, silver hair, black eyes. Wears a dark golden long skirt and a black small hat. No specific preferences or personality traits. Noteworthy, there is a winding keyhole on the back that distinguishes her from other puppets, allowing compatibility with various types of winding keys for recharging. Height, 146 centimeters. Lin stared at the Gothic-style puppet girl in the illustration with amazement. Even from the drawing, she seemed more like a real puppet, exuding a mysterious beauty and an unusual sense of horror compared to the other puppet girls. She lacked a bit of popularity compared to the other puppets. Winding up, strong combat abilities, no emotional troubles, and a lightweight puppet too. Lin almost instantly made his choice. That's her. Lin earnestly raised his head and declared. Madam Puppet was momentarily surprised and then slightly frowned, showing some reluctance. In truth, she hoped Lin would choose her eldest daughter and 3rd daughter because they were normal enough, with sufficiently high emotional development. This meant they were more likely to form a bond with the young man and be better at restraining the curse. Although the 7th daughter had extremely strong combat abilities and even defeated her older sister in a full condition one-on-one battle, it was because her emotional development was too low. She had no concept of holding back, making her aggressive and difficult to control. But how about changing to another one? or picking another one. Madam Puppet tried to persuade Lin. No, one is enough. Was he kidding? The emotional development of the third puppet was too high. If, by any chance, something happened and he inadvertently triggered something that deeply affected him, it would be disastrous. And also, young man, you can try her out for 30 days for free. If you're not satisfied, you can contact me anytime for a replacement when I return. How about that? Lin smiled. Deal. Ding. Congratulations, host, on triggering the achievement, Puppet Miss. You have gained basic experience points plus 200. Puppet Miss Phase Achievement. Obtain a personal puppet through any means. You have received a reward, Spirit plus 1, Constitution plus 2. Now, he just had to wait for the delivery. The groggy Bloodsaw finally stumbled into the front hall. He rubbed his head, feeling a bit confused and downcast. Strange, was it because I'm too tired? How could I have slept so soundly? Lin quickly approached with a cup of tea, handing it to his teacher. He cleared his throat and said, Teacher, you just had surgery yesterday. Feeling a bit tired is normal. Drink this tea specially prepared by your disciple. It nourishes the kidneys and clears the mind, very invigorating. Give it a try. Seeing his respectful disciple, Bloodsaw's mood immediately improved. What a filial disciple, waking up early to serve tea and even giving a back rub. The decision he made back then was indeed correct. Thoughtful, Bloodsaw was very pleased and drank the tea, feeling refreshed. Ding. Bloodsaw's favorability towards you plus 5. By the way, disciple, last night before going to bed, the teacher thought for a long time. I don't know if you have any thoughts about this. Putting down the teacup, Bloodsaw turned to Lin, his expression becoming serious. Do you want to become a real doctor? At this statement, Lin was momentarily surprised, asking, Are you saying? Bloodsaw faintly smiled, a profession. You are still just my apprentice for now. But if you want to continue developing, you must choose a profession that suits you as your main direction of development. Bloodsaw's first profession was a flesh-altering specialist, the second was a pharmacist, and he also dabbled in surgical procedures. However, he wasn't considered a true doctor. So, if you want to pursue the path of a doctor, I suggest you join an association or organization dedicated to this field. It will save you from many detours. Bloodsaw's words were sincere. Lin pondered, recalling the rare job transfer task given by the system. Seeing Lin's expression, Bloodsaw smiled slightly, asking, It seems like you already have an idea, right? Lin didn't hide anything. Looking serious, Teacher, have you ever heard of the profession of a night doctor? At this statement, Bloodsaw was momentarily stunned. Then an astonished expression appeared on his face. Night doctor, where did you hear this term? Lin was about to come up with a reasonable excuse, but Bloodsaw didn't continue questioning. Instead, he solemnly said, I know about this organization, Night Doctor, also known as Night Walking Doctors. They are a group of lawful and kind lunatics. Lawful and kind. Lin was astonished, asking, Is there such an organization with these principles in this dark world? You must understand, this was the dark world. Hell, qualities like lawful and kind were rarer than winning the lottery here. Bloodsaw shook his head, his gaze serious. Don't misunderstand. They are not the lawful and kind you might think. They labeled themselves that way. Lifting his head, Bloodsaw became extremely grave. If you encounter them, it's better to have some illness. They believe that all living beings in this world are sick. Their purpose is to give redemption to the creatures in this world. In simpler terms, if you meet them without any illness, they will try to find something wrong with you. If they can find it, they will help you cure it. But if they can't find anything, Bloodsaw's gaze sank as he looked at the sutures all over his body. He gritted his teeth and said, They will cut you open and continue searching until they find something. Ding. Bloodsaw's sanity -1. Lin exclaimed, so dedicated. Ding. Bloodsaw's sanity -2. Respect. Dedication. Bloodsaw looked at Lin as if he was staring at a stranger, frowning. You call this dedication? Lin thought for a moment, then coughed and, somewhat embarrassed, lowered his head, saying, Sorry, teacher, because it always feels like a group of people working hard to heal everyone, although it seems a bit fanatic. Bloodsaw's mind buzzed, and his gaze became somewhat vacant. Very good people. He didn't know how his apprentice had such absurd thoughts, but it seemed he was indeed very interested in this profession. Staring deeply at Lin, he said, Although I don't know where you heard about this organization, to be honest, they are indeed one of the few highly skilled medical organizations in this dark world. But I still advise you to reconsider joining that organization because those who can be absorbed into that profession are not normal beings. Lin pondered, saying seriously, I am normal. Bloodsaw squinted. All right, answer me a few questions, and we'll see which camp you lean towards, and then you can choose your profession accordingly. Lin was momentarily surprised but then agreed, sure. Bloodsaw thought for a moment and asked, all right, The first question, do you have compassion? Lin had a puzzled expression. After a moment of thought, he subconsciously opened his system panel and nodded, saying, yes, a lot. He had 3 love points from the system reward. Bloodsaw said deeply, second question, you are a doctor, and on the road, you encounter a patient unrelated to you. He is severely injured but harbors ill intentions towards you. Will you help him? Lin carefully considered and then said, if I don't know he harbors ill intentions, I will definitely go help him. After all, I am a white angel and cannot sit idly by watching someone die in front of me. Bloodsaw said deeply, what if you discover his ill intentions while treating him? Without hesitation, Lin replied, cure first, then advise kindness. If he remains unkind, I'll kill him. Bloodsaw wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. All right, third question. You are a doctor and you have a patient. There is a significant dilemma in front of you. You have the ability to cure him, but during the treatment, it will cause him extreme pain, and he might even die. How would you choose? Lin, after hearing the question, thought for a while. Does he want to live? Bloodsaw nodded, yes. Did he hire me to cure him? Bloodsaw hesitated for a moment and said, yes. Lin then raised his head, smiling, simple. Since the purpose of hiring me is to save him, I will definitely do whatever it takes to achieve that goal. As for the process, I don't think it's very important. Bloodsaw, still unsure, asked, what if he dies midway due to the immense pain? Lin seriously replied, necromancy, suturing technique, mechanical modification, flesh modification, puppet modification, necromancy, curses, there's always a way to resurrect him. Bloodsaw, shocked, asked, what if he can't be resurrected? Lin furrowed his brow deeply, thought for a long time, and said, do you want to hear the truth or a lie? Bloodsaw hesitated. The truth, your most genuine thoughts. Lin frowned, hesitated for a long time, and said, firstly, I wouldn't let such a situation happen, but if it did, I would blame myself and feel remorse. However, as long as the employment relationship is still intact, I will find every possible way to preserve his body until I revive him. I won't easily give up due to objective and subjective reasons. Bloodsaw was stunned, unable to say a word for a while. If this was truly what he thought, this guy might be scarier in the future than those chaotic and evil guys because of his sufficient paranoia. Because if you change the question to killing, it would be somewhat eerie. Bloodsaw took a deep breath and said seriously, let's put this topic on hold. Fourth question, suppose your closest person makes a mistake, and the mistake violates the law. What would you do? Lin chuckled. Of course, I would stand by the side of my closest person. Bloodsaw asked, why? Lin earnestly said, laws are irrelevant. Bloodsaw, what if he indiscriminately kills innocent people? In which world? Your world. Lin thought for a moment and then said, I don't like indiscriminate killing, but if his explanation convinces me, I would consider standing by his side. But if he's just doing it for pleasure, then I would probably kill him. What if it's the dark world? Lin was puzzled. Are there innocent people in the dark world? Bloodsaw took a deep breath and said seriously, the last question. If I order you to kill someone you don't want to kill, would you do it? Lin was puzzled. Teacher, would you give me such an order? Bloodsaw clapped his hands, irritated, assuming. I said assuming. Lin thought for a while and said, it's hard for me to answer this question because I don't know who you would ask me to kill. If it's your loved ones and parents. Lin didn't think twice, raised his head, showed his white teeth, and said seriously, I would kill you first. A loud explosion. A bump appeared on Lin's head, emitting a faint smoke. A few minutes later, Lin sat in front of Bloodsaw. Puzzled, teacher, were you testing which camp I belong to? Like lawful good or something? Bloodsaw closed his eyes, took a deep breath. Nonsense. This guy had nothing to do with lawful good. From his disdain for the law and his readiness to kill himself, he couldn't be associated with the entire lawful camp. But at the same time, he couldn't be chaotic and evil either, because this guy obviously had his own set of morals and values, completely different from those lunatics who only knew how to kill. Bloodsaw lifted his head, serious, what do you think is the essence of a doctor? Lin thought for a moment and then said seriously, to save lives, help the wounded, ensure that good people can live happily, and let bad people die peacefully, so that everyone is no longer troubled by illness and pain. Bloodsaw hesitated. What do you think is happiness? Lin replied seriously, being free from illness is happiness. Bloodsaw was drenched in sweat. This is the standard so low. Why were this guy's values so close to those of the night doctors? This wouldn't do. Lin eagerly asked, teacher, what camp do I belong to then? Bloodsaw thought carefully and finally reluctantly confirmed the answer, saying seriously, if your answers to those questions reflect your true thoughts, then you probably lean towards. Although you have the aspiration to become a night doctor, I, as your teacher, do not oppose your choice, but Bloodsaw looked at him seriously and continued, becoming a night doctor is not something you can decide just like that. Because no one knows where their headquarters is, and even if you happen to encounter a wandering night doctor, I'm afraid by the time you propose a recommendation, that night doctor would have already dissected you. Lin smiled slightly, flipped his finger, and raised his thumb, saying, "Don't worry, teacher, I have a special way to find the night doctor's headquarters." Because he had a special job change mission book given to him by the system. Seeing Lin's confident appearance, Bloodsaw shook his head. Forget it, since it's the path he chose himself, there's no way for him to intervene. After all, a newcomer is not afraid of the tiger. Without experiencing the beatings of this world, he can't understand the hardships of the future. Bloodsaw lowered his head, looked at him profoundly, and said, "Since this is the path you've chosen, I respect your choice. However, in the next few days, you need to be prepared. I won't stay here for too long, so I will give you a devilish training during this time. Hopefully, during this period, you can significantly improve your medical skills and survival abilities." Bloodsaw stood up with a cracking sound, indifferent, and grabbed the chainsaw next to him, pulling it out. "Although I'm not a professional doctor, in these 10 years, I have explored some unique techniques. Today, I will teaching you how to use a chainsaw to perform surgery on a patient quickly and accurately. This is a technical skill." Lin was amazed and delighted. "Teacher, you're awesome. What will we use for training?" "Little animals." And it was at the moment when he just finished speaking. Bang, bang, bang. A knocking sound came from the front hall, immediately followed by a hoarse shout. "Is there a doctor here? Just passing by, and my stomach has been acting up recently. Can someone diagnose me?" Here, Lin and Bloodsaw turned around simultaneously, with movements extremely neat and uniform. Black mist filled the air, and the sky was pitch black. Lihun Street. On the dark streets, gusts of gloomy wind swept through, and the thick night seemed like an iron curtain, making it look especially eerie. And at this moment, a young man with a pale face was crawling and rolling along the street, running forward in fear. In the darkness behind him, occasionally, there would be mysterious and eerie laughter, making it inexplicably creepy. What the hell is this place? I clearly was just on the road a moment ago. How could? Bai crawled, trembling, running forward. He knew he might have encountered a supernatural event, because just half an hour ago, he had just left school, preparing to go to a bar for a gathering organized by a few friends. In order to take a shortcut, he followed a nearby alley according to the Didi navigation. But he really didn't expect. The navigation directly led him to such a ghostly place. He could be 100% sure that he was not in the Magic City right now, because whether it was the surrounding buildings or the environment, they were completely different from the modern style. Damn you, Diddy. He cursed anxiously. Could it be that he really encountered a supernatural world? On the roadside in front, a woman with long hair and wearing a red dress standing there, her back facing him, as if waiting for someone. Her figure looked extremely beautiful from behind, with long hair hanging down, giving a melancholy beauty. A living person. Bai, panting, was stunned, because this was the first living being he had encountered on this road. He couldn't care less now. The most important thing was to quickly figure out where he was. "Excuse me, miss, can you tell me where this place is? It's my first time here, and I'm a bit lost." He stopped behind the woman, gasping for breath, and asked. Black mist surged. A gentle breeze swept. The woman, as if she hadn't heard his words, remained motionless, standing there like a statue. He reached out and patted the woman's shoulder. Crack. Before he could finish his sentence, the woman's head instantly turned 360 degrees, revealing a face that seemed like pure white dough, and a large amount of blood flowed from her neck. Bai's gaze instantly became hollow. "Welcome to Lihun Street." The face, as white as dough, slowly revealed a mysterious smile. Bai immediately trembled and let out a horrified scream. He fell to the ground in an instant, and then immediately got up, crawling, rolling, and running frantically towards the distance. A ghost. It's a ghost. At this moment, his face turned pale, hands ice cold. He didn't care about anything else, tremblingly ran towards the front. But it seemed like this road would never end. In the distance, he saw two tall and thin men standing by the wall, holding umbrellas. However, as he gradually approached, he saw that it was not two people at all. It was two people whose halves were connected together. Creak, creak, the sound of sawing flesh and blood. With just a glance, Bai was immediately scared, shivering and soulless, because that person was using a chainsaw to saw the connection between their two bodies, and a large amount of minced meat and blood splashed out. After running for a long time, he finally stopped, bent over, and gasped for breath with great effort. A large amount of sweat dripped from his forehead. But it seems that those two monsters didn't catch up. Drip, drip. Suddenly, footsteps echoed in front of him. His body stiffened instantly, and in the next moment, he saw a pair of red cloth shoes stopping on the ground in front of him. Something was standing in front of him at this moment. He dared not look up. His entire clothing was almost soaked, but he finally endured the fear, slowly raised his head, and looked at the figure in front of him. In an instant, he saw clearly the person in front of him. It seemed to be a 6 or 7-year-old girl, wearing tattered clothes, hugging a doll with obvious signs of stitching on its arm, with a bright smile on her face. But what was terrifying was that one of her eye sockets was bloody and hollow. He trembled, almost wetting his pants. "Big brother, how come you also have 2 heads?" Bai froze. 2 heads? What is she talking about? He clearly only has 1 head. And it was at this moment that he suddenly realized that since just now, he had been feeling the instability of his body, as if he was carrying something. He subconsciously turned his head and looked at his left shoulder. In an instant, 4 eyes met. His eyes almost came into close contact with a woman's severed head. His eyes were hollow, because he recognized that head. It was the woman he had encountered before. Bai almost crawled and rolled forward, crying and crawling. And behind him, there was a continuous laughter of the doll. "Big brother, don't be afraid. 2 heads are better than 1. From now on, you have a companion. Good friends, good friends." The blood doll bounced around with the doll, like a ghost, circling around Bai, and the bells on her feet made a crisp sound. Click, a lightning bolt cut through the pitch-black fog. Bai breathed heavily and suddenly rushed to the end of the street, raised his head, and his terrified eyes reflected a huge castle. Strangely, the head that was on his shoulder just a moment ago and the laughter of the doll behind him suddenly disappeared, and the words on the huge castle were reflected in his eyes. He didn't recognize those characters, but for some reason, he could understand the meaning of those words. House of Happiness. Creak, the sound of a door opening. The decaying gate of the castle slowly opened in front of him automatically, like an invitation, a mysterious call. He murmured, his legs moving involuntarily as if controlled by a mysterious force. "Welcome." Several days later, Blood saw Pharmacy, accompanied by the constant system prompts in his ear. Dressed in a white coat, with an electric saw on his back and a night demon surgery knife on his waist, Lin calmly stood in front of the door, bidding farewell to his teacher. "Go." Bloodsaw flexed his robust biceps, saying heavily, "A true doctor is not enough to learn only theory, because only practical experience can demonstrate your value as a doctor. The teacher has already arranged an outpatient order for you, and the deposit has been paid 500 skull coins. If you complete the mission perfectly, the customer will give you the remaining 15 coins. Do you have confidence in getting this outpatient fee?" "Yes, and not only that, but even more significant." Bloodsaw looked deeply at him and asked, "How significant is it?" Lin lifted the knife, confidently saying, "I guarantee to bring back 15,000 coins for master." A breeze blew, and fallen leaves fluttered between the two. Bloodsaw wiped the cold sweat on his forehead, patted Lin's shoulder with a solemn tone, and said with embarrassment, "Teacher just wanted to motivate you just now, to boost your morale. But please don't really cure the patient and then rob them, it's not good. Just take what you deserve. Although this is a dark world, business still needs to be done steadily. Don't kill the goose that lays the golden eggs, understand?" Lin nodded, "Understood. Teacher, just wait for my good news." Bloodsaw was full of satisfaction. It was like seeing his silly son finally go out to work on his own. Such feelings were really beyond the comprehension of ordinary people. "Go." Bloodsaw wiped the moist corners of his eyes, saying, "Take the order and head to the Lost Soul Street next door. If you can't find the location, remember to ask for directions. You are no longer the weak waste you were 2 years ago. Show some courage, understood? After completing this mission, you can try to find the night doctor everywhere." Lin's eyes also moistened, saying, "Yes, teacher, you also take care. Remember to drink the tea I brewed for you, good for the kidneys and against wear and tear." After more than half an hour, Lin stepped into the pretext of Soulless Street, and strands of cold wind blew from under his feet. Lin lifted his head and looked at the decaying and dilapidated signpost at the street corner. Compared to Wandering Soul Alley, the feeling of this street is even more eerie and terrifying. And his destination is the happy family on Soulless Street. According to the instructions on the order, the family of 3 urgently wanted to invite a doctor for a consultation. As for what illness it was, he would only know once he arrived. The dim light of the soul lamp dispelled the surrounding mist. Speaking of which, Lin carefully stepped into Soulless Street. The black fog here is noticeably thicker than that in Wandering Soul Alley, and the sinister atmosphere makes people feel uneasy. Walking in a place like this really gives me the creeps. Lin frowned, looked at the address on the order, and stopped at a crossroads. How do I go from here? After all, he rarely went out, and he was not familiar with the environment here. The surroundings were still filled with thick black fog, making it challenging to find the correct address. In the dense darkness, mysterious laughter echoed again. It seemed as if pairs of eyes were staring at him from the darkness. Since he stepped into this place, the unsettling feeling of being watched from all directions had not stopped, making him extremely uneasy. Lin's gaze fell instantly on the woman standing with her back to him at the intersection. Long hair, wearing red clothes, her silhouette indicated she was a beauty with a killer back view. Should I ask for directions first? Lin hesitated. Then he cleared his throat, adjusted his collar, making himself look more serious. A handsome, faint smile appeared on his face as he walked boldly behind the woman. Excuse me, miss. It's my first time here. Could I ask you how to get to the happy family? Creak. At the exact moment Lin's hand touched the woman's shoulder, her head suddenly rotated 360 degrees, swiftly turning to face him. She revealed a pure white face that looked like a mask. Suddenly, she broke into a creepy and sinister smile. Splat! A large amount of blood twisted out from her neck. Welcome to. Before she could finish her sentence, Lin, scared out of his wits, swung his shoulder upward. Several teeth shot out, and her head rotated more than a dozen times around her neck before slowly coming to a stop. The female ghost was directly stunned by this sudden confrontation. She stared blankly, moving her lips. Something's wrong. The script didn't go like this. This guy looked like a weak human, right? How could he have such strength? Brother, do you feel it? Brother, I feel it too. The two slender figures lifted their heads at the same time, turned around blankly, and looked into the darkness behind them. And when they looked, they noticed something was wrong. On the dark street behind them, under the next damaged streetlight, there was actually a human teenager sitting there. The teenager who had been sitting under the streetlight in the distance was now standing right in front of them, looking up at them closely with a friendly smile. The teenager grinned, revealing a kind smile. Sorry for scaring you. Lin raised his head politely. I observed you two sawing yourselves for over 10 minutes, and the saw seemed to be stuck in the middle position, facing some difficulties. So I came to ask if you two need the help of a real doctor. Lin, still grinning, pulled out an electric saw. The sharp blade rotated loudly in front of them as he blinked and said, How about using my saw? I guarantee it's fast and effective, and it won't hurt. The twin ghost shadows stared blankly at the two small saws in their hands, then looked at Lin's electric saw. They subconsciously swallowed saliva, and quickly hid the small saws behind them. No need. Lin looked embarrassed for a moment, then after some thought, he finally made a decision. With difficulty, he reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 cards, handing them to the twin ghost shadows. Use this item to go to the Bloodsaw Apothecary on Ghost Alley to find Dr. Lin, and enjoy a 20% discount on all items. The twin ghost shadows were stunned. Lin coughed, lowering his voice, because it's the first time I've seen conjoined beings like you in the history of our medical practice. Encountering such a case is truly rare. As a doctor, I can't contain the excitement in my beating heart. So, please give me a chance for recognition. These 2 discount coupons and skull coins are a small gift as a token of my appreciation for meeting you. Lin hoped. How about it? The twin ghost shadows looked at Lin's hopeful expression and then at the discount coupons and skull coins in their hands. They felt a massive challenge to their worldview. It won't hurt at all, and you can guarantee the success of the surgery. Lin focused on pulling the electric saw, saying seriously, Don't worry, my teacher is a renowned expert in electric saws, and I have perfectly inherited all of my teacher's advantages. How many days have you studied? 2 days. Do you need anesthesia? I have plenty in my bag. The ghost twins spat. No need for that. We saw every day, and we've long stopped feeling any pain. Our only request is for you to be quick. In an instant, under the astonished gaze of the conjoined ghost twins, Lin leaped up, holding the electric saw, gritting his teeth, and swung down toward the connection. A piercing and extremely miserable scream echoed through the night. A few minutes later, it's done. The total surgery time didn't exceed 5 minutes. You two are now independent entities. How about that? My skills aren't bad, right? Very good. But I want to ask, what method did you use to make beings like us, who feel no pain, experience pain? Because it hurts. Lin thought for a moment and said, It's probably a talent. Talent? The single ghost shadow mumbled, repeating these 2 entirely unconvincing words. His talent is to automatically bring pain to others. What kind of terrible talent is this? Looking at the map, he continued about 2 miles along this street. Lin raised his head, and in the middle of the street, there appeared a huge castle that didn't match the surrounding buildings. Click, a lightning bolt cut through the black mist. Lin read the large characters on the huge sign. It seems this is the place. Lin smiled, put away the map, and finally reached his destination for this trip. After delaying so much time on the road, he felt a bit sorry, hoping his client wouldn't be angry. But just as he was about to knock on the door, suddenly, a bell-like laughter of a little girl came from behind. "Hey big brother, are you new here?" Lin was startled because he felt the voice was very familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere before. He immediately turned around, showing a friendly expression, and said, "Yes, little sister." Then he instantly recognized the girl who poked him from behind. She was wearing ragged clothes, red shoes, had bells tied to her legs, and was holding a button doll in her arms. Blood doll. Sure enough, it was her. No wonder the voice sounded so familiar. And upon seeing Lin's face, the blood doll's bright and eerie smile instantly stiffened. Her outstretched fingers froze in place. So coincidental, isn't it? Long time no see. Lin crouched down, reached out to pat the blood doll's head, and then smiled, reaching out to poke the obviously terrified doll in her arms. "You were at Ghost Alley, weren't you? How did you end up in this ghostly place? Did you make some money? Your eyeball is still with me, haha." The blood doll, with a frightened look, tightly hugged the doll in her arms, teeth chattering, said, "Bloodsaw apothecaries. Heartless doctor." Sobbed. How come? Clearly, she had moved out of Ghost Alley. How could she coincidentally meet him again? In her mind, the scene of that day when he inserted his hand into her body echoed. Squeak. The blood doll shivered, turned around abruptly, tightly holding the doll in her arms, and tried to escape. But Lin quickly reached out, grabbing the back of her collar with one hand. "Help! Help! A perverted doctor is bullying a child." Help!" The blood doll screamed, clearly terrified. Snap! The blood doll immediately crouched down, holding her head with her hands, saying, "Ouch." Sobbing, Lin's expression turned serious as he said, "Don't make strange noises. I have something important to discuss with you. Have you ever thought that maybe your mom has been with you all along?" Lin shook his head, saying, "You might have misunderstood me in some way, but I need to make it clear to you. Have you ever considered that your mom is inside your stomach?" The blood doll was stunned. She lifted her head in confusion, looking at Lin, not understanding. "Have you ever thought that your mom has been in your stomach all this time?" The blood doll subconsciously swallowed, fear evident in her voice. "You. What do you mean?" Lin bent down, locking eyes with her, his voice low and drawn out. "After you left, I found that the rotten flesh and limbs I took out from your stomach all belonged to the same person, and in your stomach, I also found your mother's comb." The blood doll's gaze instantly became hollow. The doll in her arms immediately let out sharp cries, struggling incessantly. Lin said seriously, "Did you, at some point when you were extremely hungry, unconsciously, just like how you ate your doll's arm, eat your mother?" The blood doll extended her small hand in confusion, placing it on her stomach, murmuring, "Impossible. How could a doll eat her mother?" "Mom said she'd be back in a little while. Ask the doll to wait for her to come back." Mom clearly went out. "Mom?" Lin glanced at the doll crying loudly in her arms, saying, "Is it possible that your mother thought you were too hungry, so she, feeling too much pity, cut herself into pieces and fed herself to you?" The doll cried even louder. The blood doll let out a scream, her mouth instantly stretching to the back of her neck, her long hair behind her fluttering without wind, fierce and terrifying. "You quack doctor. Stop saying strange things. How could Mom possibly do such a thing? Because even if the doll never eats anything for a lifetime, it absolutely won't eat its mother. It won't. Don't get angry. This is not baseless speculation on my part. How about this? When I return from my consultation, you can come with me to the apothecary to verify. If those limbs really are your mother's, maybe I can help you. If not, I will take responsibility for my words and actions. How does it sound?" The blood doll still glared at him angrily, but the wild dance of her hair gradually settled down. A trace of a smile appeared in Lin's eyes as he patted her head, saying, "Don't be sad. In fact, your mother has always been by your side, you just haven't realized it. I'll be going now, otherwise, my client will be waiting impatiently." A hint of confusion appeared in the blood doll's eyes. Then she watched as Lin walked confidently towards the gate of the castle. But just as he reached the door, the blood doll's voice came from behind him. "I advise you not to go in. If they are your clients, then you're in big trouble. That's all I'll say, believe it or not." Lin turned around, only to find that the blood doll had disappeared like a ghost in the same spot. Lin was surprised. Creak. Behind him, the door of the castle slowly opened. A chilling wind blew out from inside, inexplicably making people's hearts tingle. Lin smiled faintly, opened his mouth, revealing white teeth, saying, "No, my clients are all very cute." Entering the castle. In the courtyard of the castle, covered with fallen leaves, lifting his head, Lin could see that every window of the castle was tightly sealed with wooden boards. It seemed that the owner of this castle hadn't taken care of the surroundings for a long time. Arriving at the entrance of the main hall, Lin reached out to knock on the door. Creak. Again, just like before, the door of the main hall automatically opened. "Is anyone here?" Lin shouted inside, holding the soul lamp. "I'm Dr. Lin, the one you booked. I've arrived. Is the master at home?" The echoing sound came from the empty main hall. No response, and it was at this moment that he suddenly felt a strong sense of being watched from behind. He instinctively turned around, and immediately saw, in a window on the tower, a pale face appeared, without pupils, staring at him with empty eyes. But just for an instant, that face disappeared as if it had never appeared. Lin was surprised. Almost at the same time, in the hall behind him, the candles on the candlestick suddenly lit up, illuminating the entire hall continuously. "Welcome." 3 almost simultaneously gentle voices came. Lin turned around. Just now, it was dark and quiet in the empty hall. But now, a table full of delicious food had appeared. The servants around were wiping the countertops, taking care of the candles, bustling around. And at the dining table sat a happy family of 3, a lady in evening dress, a gentleman in a tailcoat, and a young boy with a stiff smile. And all 3 of them smiled at him, an empty chair left at the table as if prepared for him. Lin tilted his head. It indeed looked like a very welcoming family. Lin's face still maintained a professional smile, taking confident steps forward. As soon as he stepped through the door, it automatically closed with a creak behind him. "Hello, I'm Dr. Lin from the neighboring Ghost Alley." He looked at the order in his hand and smiled. "May I ask which one is Miss Alice? I accepted her invitation to help with her illness. Are you her family?" In an instant, the faces of the 3 people flashed before Lin. Lin calmly and quickly glanced at the panel. His face still maintained a professional smile. Looking at this family, forcibly stitched together from different worlds, Lin's smile became even brighter. "We've been waiting for you." The lady with bright red lips opened her mouth with a graceful smile, but for some reason, it gave people an uncomfortable feeling. "Alice has been sick for a long time. Many doctors have come, but they haven't been able to cure Alice's illness. They really make people dislike them." Brother Bai excitedly grinned, drooling, holding a fork, and said eagerly, "But you must be able to cure Alice's illness, right, doctor? You must be able to, right?" Master Carmel immediately followed with a smile. "So we've prepared a table of sumptuous meals to reward you. It's an honor for you to visit our humble abode, doctor." All 3 of them widened their mouths, making their smiles look even more brilliant. Suddenly triggered 2 missions. Lin has already felt the strangeness of this trip. However, without thinking, he smiled and approached, put down the medical box, sat in the chair that seemed to be specially reserved for him, picked up the knife and fork, and said, "Thank you. As a doctor, I'm really flattered to receive such a warm reception from you. May I ask how Miss Alice is doing now? Can you take me to see her?" The master smiled. "No hurry, my good daughter is sleeping. She easily gets tired, and generally, we don't disturb her when she's asleep. Doctor, you can have some food first, take a rest, and relax." Saying that, he waved his hand. A stiff-faced servant pushed a food cart to Lin. He placed a plate in front of Lin, covered with a silver lid, emitting a rich meaty aroma. The lady smiled. "Please, honored doctor, taste the delicacies specially prepared for you by our chef." Lin reached out and removed the lid. Immediately, a rich and intoxicating fragrance came over. In the plate was a carefully plated and perfectly cooked organ, covered with rich sauce, looking incredibly appetizing. And in front of Lin, an introduction appeared. Freshly extracted kidneys, 80% cooked, well cooked to make it incredibly delicious. On the opposite side, Bai excitedly patted the table, drooling, holding a fork and eagerly saying. Lin hesitated. "It looks delicious, but I'm not very fond of eating organs." Instantly, the smiles on the faces of the 3 people froze in place. The candles on the candelabrum around flickered, and the light in the entire hall became unpredictable. "You don't like the food I made?" The lady forced a smile, her voice becoming more uncomfortable. "Don't mind me, I'm straightforward. I don't like organs, but I enjoy other things." Lin stood up cheerfully. Then he picked up the plate, removed a few sausages from the table in front of him, and took some apples. Lin opened his mouth, bit into a sausage, and chuckled, "This is not bad. But the next moment, he felt that something was wrong with the sausage in his mouth. Looking again, he found that the fragrant sausage in his hand had turned into a sausage filled with thick and sticky flesh, and a large amount of fresh blood was squeezed out from inside. Fresh pig intestines filled with 15 different ingredients selected from various physicians, versatile in flavor with endless aftertaste. Despite seeing the three people staring at him, Lin still maintained an unchanged smile, chewing the dish in his mouth, and the rich blood flowed out from the gaps between his teeth. Seeing Lin's expression of enjoyment, the three people immediately restored their gentle smiles, the candlelight no longer flickering, and the atmosphere suddenly became warm again. Eat, eat, Lin smiled and extended his hand, saying, everyone should eat, don't let me be the only one or I'll feel embarrassed. Saying that, Lin picked up the apple in his hand. Fresh and enticing, red and delicious. But upon closer inspection, it was covered with mold, and a large number of maggots were wriggling from inside and outside. Lin laughed. Seeing that family looking at him again, Lin extended his left hand, forcefully opened the mouth with his thumb and forefinger, and forcefully stuffed the fruit inside. Looking at the gaze of the three people, Lin smiled and raised his left hand, explaining, oh, this is my second mouth. Because it's so delicious, one mouth is not enough to satisfy my appetite, so I want to eat with two mouths. Do you mind? The lady's gaze at Lin became even more amiable. She smiled brightly, stood up, and placed the dishes one by one into Lin's plate, saying, no problem at all. I'm so happy to see you enjoying it. Eat more, don't be polite. Lin chuckled. He picked up the fork and fed the delicious food on the table into the mouth of his left hand. Finally, after 2 servings, Lefty became impatient, swung out suddenly, clenched his fist, and punched towards Lin's head. But Lin was quick, swiftly grabbed Lefty's wrist, maintained his smile, and forcefully pressed Lefty's hand down. It's okay, it's okay. Seeing the changing expressions of the family again, Lin explained with a smile, it's too delicious, so I couldn't help but want to stretch a bit. You don't mind, right? Saying that, Lin quickly bent down, using the dining table as a cover, restraining Lefty's wrist, and said seriously, Lefty, what are you doing? Lefty angrily gritted his teeth. Damn guy, you fed this girl some weird stuff again. Lin ground his teeth. You voluntarily ate it. It wasn't forced into your mouth. Lin said seriously, so, as long as you help me deal with this lunch, I'll treat you to a super delicious strawberry cake. How about that? Lefty puzzled. Strawberry cake. Cream, strawberries, soft egg sponge cake, plus a little fragrant baked cheese. Lefty suddenly showed an expression. Looks very tempting. So, do you agree? Agree, but you have to keep your promise, don't play any tricks on me. Rest assured, when did I ever play tricks on you? That's not far off. Saying that, Lin instantly sat up with a smile, picked up a steak in his hand, stuffed it into the mouth of his left hand, and said, sorry for the wait, everyone. Shall we start? Saying that, under the gaze of the smiling family, Lin extended his left hand, politely cleared the contents of the plate. The lady kept happily and reassuringly serving Lin with food, saying, there's a lot more, don't rush, eat slowly. After more than 10 minutes, the smiles on the faces of the family gradually became somewhat forced. They looked at the empty plates on the table, then at the stack of plates piled up next to Lin, and their expressions became somewhat stiff. Burped. Lin symbolically burped, smiled and said, too delicious. Is there more? The master glanced at the lady across from him. The two of them faced each other and said blankly, there is. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.